Siddique Farooqi alongside the technician Chris Aceto, Classic Physique Prejudging, just wrapping up here at the Olympia Expo. And Chris, for a third consecutive year, the top three will feature the combination of Breon Ansley, Chris Bumstead, and George Peterson.
Yeah, you know, it's a repeat. And what's repeating is this. Those three, but all three are at their absolute best, period. If Chris Bumstead didn't bring his best this year, it'd be a cakewalk for someone else. And if Breon didn't bring his best, then Chris Bumstead would be winning, and George Peterson brought his best. So if those guys brought their last year's condition, George Peterson wins the show. I wouldn't say it's that close. I mean, in terms of the point being is that they're all at their best, and if they didn't bring it, you know, any of them in their last year's condition would fall.
We did a video a couple of days ago discussing, you know, this upcoming Olympia weekend, and you made the point about Classic Physique, how it's very plausible.
10 years ago.
That is going. No, you made it. Is that it's very likely that this weekend's Classic Physique would feature the same top three, despite the new guys, the new top competitors entering this division.
Because it's just like, look at Dennis Wolf, you couldn't knock the guy out of the top four. Roden, you can't knock him out. Phil, you can't knock him out. You can't, up until a couple years ago, you can't get Dexter out of the top four because they are that good. No matter what these other young guns look like, and there's a lot, this show was off the hook. You know, there were 39 guys, probably the top 30 were incredible. And they all won shows, so they are incredible. But, you know, to get past these three, you got to bring something that is beyond special, because that's how good all three were.
Let's go with the top three. What did you make of Breon Ansley?
Breon was absolutely improved over the Arnold, markedly so. Way more, he's got thicker hams from behind, better leg separation. I thought he even brought his waist down further. His shoulders, you know, have more thickness to him. His conditioning, for I would say, for that fullness was completely spot on. There's nothing that I could pick apart in terms of how he looked here versus last year, or here versus the Arnold, where he did not improve.
Chris Bumstead.
Chris Bumstead clearly his all-time best. Smoked last year's shape. Yeah. Smoked 2 years ago. Extremely impressive and dangerous from the front on the front double. Side chest is very dominant in this lineup. He's bigger than these guys. He's wider than these guys. He has his own unique ability to present himself and show himself as like, I am, and this might give him the edge. Yes. I am the best guy up here. It's a non-arrogant, very genuinely confident way of presenting a package that's really got some attributes to it that push him ahead of Breon. Where you don't want to be if you're competing against Chris is standing relaxed.
Yeah.
And
it's a statue.
His stature, his silhouette is the best up there. His shoulders are the widest up there. His shoulder arm tie-in on the quarter turns on the side chest, you know, they make it difficult for George and Breon, as much as they bring, to stand against him. And his conditioning was the best it's ever been. I've always been critical, I think, of the, you know, condition from behind,
right?
Whether it be glutes and hams or even the back. He needs more back thickness. He's standing against guys with tremendous amounts of back muscle.
Well, that's what George Peterson brought. We talk about knockout body parts. George brought that, and he showed the back today.
But getting back to Chris, one more thing. But he brought enough in the back to do the job. You know, to be where the judges left him in that. It seems like first position. You know,
that's what it looked. At the end, he was in the middle.
It looked like that way. I actually had Chris Bumstead the winner. As they got going, I moved in my mind. I changed to Breon. When they kept on moving him around, right, I kept on coming back to Chris's thickness as a bigger guy that overshadowed a lot of detail in Breon's physique. George Peterson, all-time best. All-time best. He's probably, in a way, you know, the V-taper's wider, big, you know. It's his all-time best with great condition, with great muscle detail, with a lot of muscle. He knows how to present what he has. But in terms of pure classical structure next to those two, it's a minute ding but Bumstead has a more classical, whatever, a classical square tapered look to him, and I think that's what puts him. I think this show probably boils down to structure, which it probably should in Classic, because that's the idea. You know, Classic, you think structure and flow. You know, Chris has a traditional look in terms of Classic, and you know, George has maxed out his physique, and I don't mean he can't get better, but I think you know, it's apples and oranges, and my personal preference was Bumstead with right on his tail, Breon, and then George Peterson after that. I don't know where, you know, Dr. Mind was sitting, but I always open-minded to his opinion.
Obviously, the top three, again, is a story for a third consecutive year.
Yes, I mean, I didn't listen exactly what Chris had to say. From my perspective, okay, top three we know. I was surprised with how good George looked. Very, very polished, very detailed, yeah. Chris Bumstead obviously has that structure, but he does have a flaws. He has a short bicep that is very hard to hide in the Classics. So I think once they lift their arms in both front and back double biceps, both Breon and George were beating Chris. For me, it's super close between George and Breon, with Chris being third.
With what? Close between George and Breon with Chris third?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? This is Classic Physique and this is opinions, because I had Bumstead first, but you know, what I said this. Steve Weinberger does an unbelievable job of picking. I can follow the 39, but I can't pick the 39 like in order. In other words, I can pick once the top 8 are in front of me and I say, yeah, this is the top 8 who I think should be the top 8. It's somewhat easy to pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But to make the distinction, who's 3, who's 4 to 5 and 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, he does an unbelievable job. But, you know, I think Classic, more than like open, it lends itself to more opinions to what your vision of Classic is. So although I think, you know, I picked Bumstead, I listen to Milos and I say, I can't knock that opinion because it makes sense. You know, so it puts the judges in a tough position of like, what is Classic, who's winning here? But I agree 100% with, you know, Milos, where the amount of detail and polish is the key word. The amount of polish that George brought was, you know, unique and impressive.
When you see all these fibers, right, and tie-ins, it's very, very impressive. Chris Bumstead just didn't have that. He has a tall structure. He has that vacuum. When he hits the ab shot, it's okay. It's not spectacular. I was very surprised with Breon's abdominal shot. You know, he was washed out, leaning forward, and there was nothing happening, and it was amazing. Now, when you hit, interestingly, front double biceps from the front, Breon killed George, but from the back, George. I mean, in the arm department. From the back, George's arms look bigger and more peaked and everything. But for me, really, it's between George and Breon, with me giving an edge to George.
It's going to be a dynamite final, so again, for the third straight year in this evolving division, the Classic Physique final will come down to the defending two-time champion Breon Ansley, Chris Bumstead, and George Peterson. Impressive stuff here from Classic Physique in the prejudging. For Chris Aceto and Milos Sarcev, I'm Siddique Farooqi. We'll see you tonight from The Night Show.